Hello, I am here to tell you about how the Molecule framework is integrated with the tiled map editor. This will increase your game development speed. And to show this off, we are actually going to build a small game, which I like to call the Resurrection of the Deadly Desert Bushes. It's not really a great game, but it should suffice for this tutorial. So if we have a look at my project here, we can see that I have some assets, a couple of images, the latest version of Molecule, my main script file, and index.html, which just loads Molecule and my script. Currently it doesn't do much. It loads up Molecule with a game that has a size of 640 by 640 pixels, and it's ready to go. If we have a look in the browser, it doesn't really display anything, so I think we just should get going on creating a tile map. So I jump over to the tiled map editor and I choose to create a new tile map. Just keep the orientation and layer format, but these other settings like tile size and map size are important. So the image I'm going to load has tiles of 32 times 32 pixels, and I want to add 20 tiles in the width of the tile map and 20 tiles in the height. This results in 640 by 640 pixels, which also is the size of my game. Now, this isn't required. You can have a tile map that is much larger than your game size, and you can use the camera to like move around in the tile map and stuff like that, but that's not for this tutorial. Alright, so here we have our tile map. And we have a default tile layer, which I now will name Desert instead. And we will just go ahead and load up an image, which you do by going to Map and New Tile Set. And we browse for that image. Let's see, Desert PNG. There are a few settings here, but most importantly is the size of the tiles on this image, which is 32 by 32 pixels. I click OK, and now we have the tile map loaded. As you can see, I can click these different tiles and I can then start to draw them to the tile map. What we're going to do now is just choose the empty desert, the plain desert tile, and we will just fill this area with the desert, like that. Before adding anything else, we have to load this tile map into our game and see if it works. So I just save this in my assets folder. Be sure to choose the JSON file format and give it a name. I just call this desert. There we go. So now we have to load this tile map into our game. We do that simply by adding tile map, give it a name, desert, and point to the path where the file is located. When when all the assets are loaded by Molecule, it will run this ready callback, where we just say game tile map set and point to the name of the tile map, which I set up here. So these are the same. Okay, I save that and I go to refresh, and there we go. We have our desert. So to create some good game logic here, we're going to look at collisions, and so we need something that our bushes can collide with. We just go back to the tile map editor and we will add some buildings. Since these buildings are going to be collidable, we need to create a new layer. So I add a new layer, I call it buildings. And what I can do now is right click this layer and go to layer properties. And I can add molecule properties to these layers. So molecule has a property collidable, which it looks for, and if that is set to true, everything drawn on this layer will be collidable. So to start drawing, I just choose these 4 tiles and choose the stamp, and then start adding some buildings around this map. So, and there. When I save this and I jump back to the game, we see our buildings are in place. Now, okay, so this is our basic map. Now we want to add some bushes. To do that, we have to move back to our tile map editor, and we are going to create a new type of layer. Now this layer will link back to the molecule framework to a molecule we are going to create in just a moment. So let's just start out with this layer first. Instead of adding a tile layer, we are going to add an object layer. Now the name of this object layer is important. I will call it Deadly Bush, and this means that the molecule I'm going to define later in my code needs to have the same name. There we go. To actually use this layer, we have to load up a new tile map, a new tile set. So I go to Browse and choose the bush. Now this bush file also has a tile size of 32 by 32 pixels. It doesn't have to have that, but it does in this case. So I click OK, and as we can see now, we have our bush. Now this image only had 1 tile, but you could have multiple tiles here, like let's say you wanted to create an animation where the bush kind of blows in the wind or something. There could be more tiles here, and that could be used to create animation inside the molecule we're going to build later. Yes, so by clicking this and choosing the Insert Tile tool, and I will also hold my command key in to see that the bushes actually align with the tile map. You don't have to do that, but it's a nice way of inserting sprites. Okay, so now we have some bushes, and we need to create our molecule to connect this layer to actual game logic. So we do that by pointing to our game molecule.define, and our first argument here will be the name of the molecule, which is Deadly Bush. You remember that this name has to be the same as this object layer. Like so, and then we have an object where we are going to insert a couple of methods. The init method will of course run when any Deadly Bush is created, and we have the update method, which will run on each frame of your game. There we go. Okay, so I have saved my file, and we jump back to the tile map and refresh, and there we go. We have our bushes. So let's make these bushes a bit deadlier. Let's make them move. So to do that, we have to add some properties, and we're going to add these properties to the sprite that has now been added to our molecule. So when I point to this.sprite, that will point to the actual sprite in the game. So this happened when we linked the Deadly Bush object layer to the molecule in our game. What the molecule framework does is create this sprite property to let you manipulate it. So I point to this.sprite, and I will set the speed max x to 1, and I will also set the speed max y to 1, and I will also set an acceleration x to 1. It's important to use acceleration and just not move the sprite with the position. This has to do with collision. So I save that and refresh the game, and there we go. Our bushes have started to move. But that isn't very exciting. We should create some more advanced logic here. So we do that by adding a couple of properties. Acceleration x, which is 1, acceleration y, which is 0 at the moment. And we will start to check for collision. But before that, we will just change the acceleration to use our new properties instead of defining them directly. Oops, this AI. Let's start to check that everything still works, and it does. Good. Okay. First, we will check if the bush will collide on its right side. So we create check here, this sprite, collision, and we check if it collides with the map and on its right side. If it does, we are going to set the x acceleration to 0, and we will set the y acceleration to -1, which means it will go upwards. So let's test that. There we go. Whenever it collides on the right side, it will move upwards. But that isn't enough. We of course want them to move when they hit the top and the left and the bottom too. So we can do that quite easily by just copying this, else if this sprite flash up, we want it to go left, and when we hit the left we want it to go down, and when we hit bottom down, we want it to go to the right again, like that. Okay, so let's test this. Seems to be okay. They move. Very nice. Okay, but as you can see, all the bushes eventually go off the screen. So what we'll do now is create some boundaries in our game so they don't do that. And boundaries are defined on the game object itself. Boundaries, and it's an object with with an x property, a y property, a width, which we just set to the game width, and a height, which is set to the game height. Okay, so now we have set the boundaries of the game, but we still have to check the collision. So that is quite easy to do when we already check the map. We just copy that and choose boundaries instead. Let's see, it's a little bit, there we go. And now I will just copy that, and that was up, that was left, that was down. Okay, let's try again. And there we go. They collide with the boundaries too and change direction based on the collision. As you can see, all the bushes are also colliding with each other and waiting for each other. This is all handled by the Molecule Framework. You don't really have to think about that stuff. But you are able to manipulate it if you want to, of course. So yeah, this is basically our game. I hope you have gotten a good insight to how you can easily work with the Molecule Framework and the Tiled Map Editor. Think that you're done building your game. You have all your game logic, you have your molecules in there with all this different logic, and you can just use the Tiled Map Editor to just create levels for your game very, very quickly. You don't really have to code it, and that is very, very nice, and that is where the development speed comes from. But again, yeah, hope you had a good time watching this tutorial. Thank you very much.